For these pieces here, we should be able to use our mirror modifier after we pack islands. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the division key, take the mirror off, and then hit the division key here. And how should we do this? Let's go ahead and press Control A and apply the scale so we know that that's done. And I think for this, we're going to need to maybe Alt-click this edge and go ahead and mark seams for these. And also we'll go ahead and add an edge right up here, add a seam right there so it'll break out and lay out flat. So actually, let me undo this real quick. And let's just select these faces right here. Let's just select these. Let's press U and unwrap. And that's what we get. You can see that circular. Now if I select that edge and add a seam there, now let's select all of these and hit U and unwrap, and let's compare what we get. There we go. So just adding that one seam breaks it apart and allows Blender to lay it out flat. All right, so also let's go ahead and select this edge and mark seam. Oh, it looks like we need to grab these two here. Let's do that. All right. Oh, and these down here. Let's go ahead and grab these. There we go. So there's our seams. Let's select everything, press U and unwrap, and there we go. Now we can switch from conformal to angle-based and see what we get. Yeah, I kind of like that a little bit better. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and go with that. I'll hit the division key and let's select something else. What else should we do? Well, let's try this one here. Let's hit the division key and take a look at it. Now, I think we can go ahead and get rid of these faces here. I don't think we're ever going to see those, which makes our life a whole lot easier now. Let's go ahead and apply the scale. And let's select, say, these edges, and that'll split those out and kind of fold it out at these edges that we haven't selected yet. So let's mark seams there, and let's press U and unwrap, and there we go. You can see it's folded it out at these seams here. We can switch from angle-based to conformal. We don't see any difference whatsoever, so that's fine. We'll just leave it like that. All right, we're done with that. Let's hit the division key and move on and see what else we can do. How about this thing right here? Let's isolate that, remove the mirror modifier, and let's zoom in. For this, we may be able to just allow Blender to break this out using Smart UV Project. It's a fairly simple shape. It may be able to do a pretty good job with this. Let's go ahead and apply the scale in object mode and then tab back into edit mode. Let's select everything. Let's press U and let's give Smart UV Project a try. Let's click OK. And yeah, that looks good to me. So each of these pieces here has been broken out like that. So with that done, let's go ahead and bring everything back. And I think these are going to be pretty obviously in frame at the same time. In other words, you'll be able to see both of these at the same time as opposed to these on the side that you can only see one side or the other. So let's go ahead and add a mirror modifier back to it. And then let's go ahead and apply it. So that'll make that so that when we pack islands, those will split out. So let's tab into edit mode again. And you can see here, say with this one, if I hit G, it's right on top of that other one over on the other side. So ultimately, when we pack islands, it'll look like that, or it'll break apart into its individual component pieces on both sides. And that's good. That's probably what we want because we can see them both at the same time. All right. What about one of these things here? These things, I think we should go ahead and use that Smart UV Project. Let's isolate them. Let's apply the scale. Let's tab into edit mode and let's take a look at this one here. Let's just hit L. And as I said, this one is thin enough and complex enough and small enough on the vehicle that we can just use Smart UV Project. So let's just press U, Smart UV Project. Okay, great, that's fine. Let's come over here and do the same thing with this. U, Smart UV, okay. All right, and if we select them both here, there they are. And we can at least temporarily pack islands so we can see them. As I said, this is just a temporary thing. We'll be doing it all at once for the entire vehicle. All right, so those are good. Let's hit the division key, and what else should we do? Well, we should probably get this done right here. Let's figure out how much we're going to see of this. Looks like we can delete these faces down here. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's try that. So let's isolate this. And once again, let's go ahead and apply the scale. And we could probably just select this edge and mark the seams. And then let's hit U and let's use unwrap here. And that just breaks that out, kind of folds those parts out at that edge right there. Yeah, so let's try that. Let's try conformal, angle base. Don't see any difference, so that's good. All right, let's go back. And what else can we do? Well, we could go ahead and work on one of the lights, and then once we get this UV mapped, we can then just delete the others and duplicate it back to where they are. Let's go ahead and do that. I'll hit the division key, and here we go. Let's tab into edit mode, and I think ultimately we've got a couple of parts here now. If I recall, this part, and then this part, and then this part. So we've got a couple of different pieces here that we can work with. So first of all, let's hit the L key and let's press Shift H to isolate it or to hide all the unselected parts. For this, we could probably go ahead and just insert an edge or a seam right here. And then since this is once again one of those circular pieces, if we selected this and hit U and unwrap, it would make it circular. And also take a look at this. It's a little bit oval shaped, which once again tells us what? That we need to apply our scale. Now if we hit U and unwrap, now it's a circle. But we don't want it to be a circle. We want it to be laid out in a flat strip. So if we select one edge here and mark a seam, now if we do that, there we go. So those are good. All right, let's press Alt-H and bring these back. Now let's select another part right here. Shift H to hide the unselected, and let's try this. Now for this, I'm curious as to what this would look like if we just unwrapped it as is. Let's just try. I'm going to hit U and unwrap, and that's it, huh? Well, that's ugly. Okay, so we can't really do that. If we switch to conformal, makes it even worse. Okay, so we can't do that. We could break this out right here and select this edge and mark a seam there. Now let's try this. Let's see if we get any better results with this. A little bit better, a little bit. We could switch from conformal to angle base, see what we get. I'm still not liking the stretching we're getting with the light blue here. In fact, if we go ahead and add that material to it and go over to the look dev, here's what we get. And we've got some pulling and stretching here. I think maybe what we could do is go ahead and add a seam here and here. Now, those seams are going to be fairly visible, but I think it'll be okay because this particular object is just going to have a uniform texture on it. Just, you know, a black plastic kind of a texture. So let's give this a try. Let's hit U and unwrap, and let's give that a try. That's a lot better, actually. Everything's a lot more square and uniform. There's still a tiny bit of pulling around here, but I think that'll be fine. Let's go ahead and press Alt-H and bring everything back. And now let's select this part, and let's press Shift-H. I'll go back to solid view, and we know we want to break out the light part of it here. So let's go ahead and add a seam there. And we could probably break this out right here. Let's try this. Alt-Shift, click here. And let's break that out into its own piece. And let's just try this. Let's see what happens. I think it's going to have some stretching, but let's give it a try. Yep, it's still got quite a bit of stretching. A couple things. We could maybe select an edge here and an edge here and split these out. Let's try that. Hit L. I'm going to hover over one of the edges and hit L, and then U and unwrap. Well, that broke those out, so it looks a little bit better. We've got quite a bit of stretching in here. I wonder if we selected an edge in here and broke these out, if that would be helpful. Let's try this. I'm just going to break these out here. Oops, I marked sharp again. Let's try that again. Mark seam. There we go. This edge, or these two edges, and maybe two edges here. Let's try this. All right, I'll select it all, U, and unwrap. It's a little better. Let's go ahead and take a look at it in LookDev. It may be better to add seams along this curve instead. Let's take a look at that. Let me tab back into edit mode, and instead of putting the seams here, let's clear the seam here and clear the seam here. Instead of putting them here, let's try it along here. I'm going to press Control-click to extend that selection, and let's put them along here, and maybe along here, like that. Let's try this. And sometimes this is what you have to do. You just have to give it a try and see what works. You unwrap. Well, that's interesting that it didn't break it out over here. Did I not apply that edge? I did not. So let's go ahead and do that again. I'll go ahead and grab this and let's mark seam. There we go. Now we've got those seams on both sides, so let's hit U and unwrap there. Yeah, I think that's a little better. Let's take a look here. Yeah, that seems to be a little bit better. Let's go ahead and go with that. So now what we can do is bring everything back, and I'll turn on solid mode again. And then what we can do is we can select this, move the cursor to it with Shift S2, delete it, select this, duplicate it with Shift D and enter, and then press Shift S and 8 or selection to cursor, and that will pop over there. Now what we can do is press RZ and spin it around. So there we go. Same thing over here, Shift S2, delete, select here, duplicate, Shift S8, and there it is, RZ over here. Now let's do it one more time. We can select this, Shift S2, we can delete it, come over here, duplicate, Shift S8, and that'll pop it over there, RZ, spin it around. There we go. So now all of these have been UV mapped. And it just saves a lot of time if you just UV map one and then duplicate them around again.